Right, thank you so much for staying with us. Time now for To The Point. And on To The Point tonight, we look at miscarriages or pregnancy loss, with a particular interest on this right here, pregnancy loss leave. Did you actually know that it exists? Let's move on to our next slide. And of course, miscarriage is also called early pregnancy loss. And it is when there is a pregnancy loss before 20 weeks. Miscarriage is actually very, very common. So, according to Match of Dimes, about 10 to 20 pregnancies, that is in 100 pregnancies, that is 10 to 20%, and in miscarriage. Most miscarriages, 8 out of 10, that is 80%, happen in the first trimester before the 12th week of pregnancy. Let's talk recovery, and because this leads us to our conversation tonight. Now, according to Match of Dimes, again, it can take a few weeks to a month or more for your body to recover from a miscarriage, depending on how long you are pregnant, right? You may have pregnancy hormones in your blood for 1 to 2 months after you miscarry. How about emotionally? So it may take longer to recover emotionally from a miscarriage. You may have strong feelings of grief about the death of your baby. Grief can make you feel sad, angry, confused, or alone. Therefore, it is okay, and I need to emphasize that it is okay to take time to grieve after a miscarriage. Again, that is according to Match of Dimes. So let's take a look now at the pregnancy loss leave, and we come home because you might be aware that East African Breweries Limited has started giving female employees who experience pregnancy loss up to 6.5 months paid leave. Actually, Waidera will correct me there and tell me it's 6 months paid leave to grieve. EABL says it has classified pregnancy loss as bereavement and is giving female employees or spouses up to 10 working days of paid leave if the pregnancy loss occurs before 20 weeks. When pregnancy loss occurs after 20 weeks, the carrying female can access up to 26 weeks, while the spouse can access up to 10 working days of paid leave. This is EABL's move, which is part of its pregnancy loss guidelines. Now, the Brewers' pregnancy loss guidelines create awareness on various types of pregnancy loss, including resources available to employees and line managers of those who may experience this loss. And I want us to halt there. And at this point, I want to engage my guests, who you already know are with me in studio. Evelyn Odori, who is a gospel minister, Waidera Mwai, Sustainability and Stakeholder Engagement Manager at the Kenya Breweries Limited, and of course, Catherine Mwangi, Council Member, Institute of Human Resource Management, or IHRM. Karibuni sana, ladies. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Grace.
So I want a quick reaction to this, and Waidera, you'll permit me, you'll be the last one on this. I'll start with Evelyn and then go to Catherine. Catherine, your quick reaction on this, a pregnancy loss leave. Evelyn. Look at me.
Okay, thank you. Nataka kushukuru kwa nafasi hii tena kwa ajili ya hiki kikao, na nashukuru Mungu ambaye ametupa hii nafasi. Pregnancy loss ni kitu ambacho kimekuwa common. I'm a victim too. And ni kitu ambacho kimeaffect akina mama. Ina depend, according to me, ina depend na mazingira pia. Mazingira yamechangia sana wamama kupoteza ujauzito, na yale mazingira yakiwa si mazuri wanaafektiwa hata baada ya kupoteza ujauzito. I think it's very good kwa kila company, ombi langu ya kwamba wamama waangaliwe wakati amepoteza huu ujauzito, wacha akapewe mazingira mazuri aweze kupona, kwa sababu baada ya kupoteza ujauzito wengi hata wanashikwa na depression kwa sababu basing na yale mazingira ambayo wamama wako kwayo. Wengine tunapoteza kwa sababu ya mazingira ya kijamii, mazingira pale kazini, pressure ziko nyingi. So unapata wakati mama ni mjamzito hawezi kaa na huu ujauzito kwa environment nzuri, so inaharibika kwa umri mdogo sana. And it's so painful kubeba mimba hata kama ni wiki 3, wiki 6, and then una lose. It's so painful. Na baada ya kupoteza tena unakosa kupata mazingira mazuri ya kuangaliwa, unaona? So unapata kupoteza ujauzito ni sawa na ni chungu kushinda kupata mtoto. Man, I have experience too. Kupoteza mimba ama kuharibika kwa ujauzito ni kuchungu sana kushinda kule kubeba mimba mpaka kupata mtoto. So unapata hawa mama wakati hawaangaliwi vizuri, mama akitoka pale tena anakuwa na ile apate ile recover nzuri. Hawezi recover kwa haraka. anashikwa na depression, wengine pressure zinakuwa nyingi na unapata afya zao zinadhoofika. So ni vizuri, my prayer is wamama, mazingira ya kazi, pale nyumbani, ukiwa na mama ambaye ana fight hiki kitu, muangalie vizuri, maana most of us tuko affected.
Kwa hivyo ni vizuri kampuni kuwa na mazingira mazuri.
Ni mzuri sana.
Wanawake hawa. Ni
vizuri sana kampuni kuweka mazingira mazuri, kuangalia hawa mama, wapewe muda wao, wapone. Vile tunapea tu wale watu wengine leave wakati wamepata watoto, hata hawa waangaliwe. Kwa sababu pia ona amepoteza, ana ule unyonge wa mwili na ule uchungu wa kupoteza. Kwa hivyo waangaliwe.
All right. Yeah. And Catherine, it's actually not just for women, men too. You know, men whose spouses have miscarried, have experienced a miscarriage. Your thoughts on that?
Thank you, Grace. Indeed, it is both parties. And let me start by emphasizing on the area of women, because the society will look at a woman as a weakling. And in that case, it's very traumatizing. Emotionally, you are very unstable. Actually, you're even looked at by your family members, like what is happening. Actually, they start calculating your days before you got married, and that's why you are losing this baby. And if you're not married, of course, they will be able to add it up to other issues. You know, that is exactly the way the society will look at you. Now, look at the gentleman at the same time. The gentleman, and especially if you're married and you're young, and probably this is your first baby or the second baby, losing that pregnancy, of course, you will be attached to your wife or to your spouse. And in that case, I want to congratulate East African breweries for this kind of a brave move. Indeed, it has actually even set the standards for other companies in Kenya. It has lifted us to international standards where we expect everybody else to be. And for me, I just say it's a plus, and let's emulate this move, because this is the right time that we need it. Because women have been judged many years and many times. Men have also been judged, and secretly and inwardly they just keep quiet, and they are suffering inwardly. So this particular break for them to be able to bear the loss, to go through the emotion so that they can be able to bear the loss, is perfectly well placed for this particular moment in time.
Right. And Waithera, as Sustainability and Stakeholder Engagement Manager at Kenya Breweries Limited, we want to know, what was the thinking around this? What birthed this policy, 6 months, for women who experience a miscarriage, 10 days, right? For the men? Take us through that.
Thank you. So for us, as KBL, as EABL, as Diageo, sustainability is at the heart and at the core of what we do. We have a sustainability strategy called Society 2030, and within it there's a policy, or there's a pillar under inclusion and diversity. So this policy was birthed first from the trends, the data that you have showed us. Even WHO put out a report that 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in a miscarriage, being the first, the biggest pregnancy loss that there is. And so for us as a business, we had to look at ourselves and ask ourselves, what can we do in this space? It came at a time when we had just reviewed our family leave policy, which is our maternity policy, where we give 6 months maternity leave to the female, to the mother, and we give a month to the spouse. And so from that, we were able to say pregnancy loss can be looked at in a different light as bereavement. And so we, as an inclusive organization, went ahead and did research and to see how we can help our staff, because our employees are our biggest asset. And that was what birthed it. We also have a program called Spirited Women. And so there was a push both internally and externally that this is the right time to sit and look at how we can help the employees within the business and all employees to go through this process of bereavement through pregnancy loss. And that really was the background and the context to what led to the policy being implemented within EABL. And so I just wanted also to clarify, because you mentioned that it's a policy for women. Our policy is open to all employees. So at the time of bereavement, or when you lost that pregnancy, all employees are entitled to this kind of benefits.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And Catherine has alluded to it, but I just need to ask this. How did you remember the men? Because mostly you wouldn't expect, this leave to extend to the men.
Like I mentioned, we are an inclusive and diverse organization. And so we realize that the spouse is the first support of the partner. So a lot of times they're forgotten. You know, so you're going through this process, and the focus has been a lot on the mother, on the carrier, because they are actually physical, there are physical elements that we can see you're going through after the pregnancy loss. However, the spouse also bears a lot of the grief, and lots of the time, because they're not allowed the environment to express themselves, they just bury the grief. And then you see and hear about all the cases around mental illness, you know, things to do with depression, things to do with anxiety. And so we brought in the men to the fore so that we appreciate and say that even the spouses must be allowed that space to grieve and given the patience and the time to do so.
Another curious question, whether how do you ascertain that indeed for this man, the spouse was pregnant and the spouse did miscarry?
We use the certificates, just as in a birth. We use medical certificates from the hospital, certified certificates. We use marriage certificates to prove that that is indeed your spouse. So we use, you know, publicly certified documents from hospitals and also marriage certificates just to ensure that what you are saying is true.
All right, Grace, allow me to add on what she has said, and this is in connection. How do you believe that this particular wife was pregnant? In most companies, what we are encouraging from a HR point of view, we are encouraging open and clear communication, whereby there is privacy also inclusive, so that once you are married and your spouse is pregnant, it is clear cut that you are supposed actually to report to the HR, and remembering that we have the DPA, that is the Data Protection Act, with us. So that particular information that has been given to the HR department or the HR office is completely confidential, and then you start tracking that kind of the couple from that point of view. Yeah. All
right. Thank you, Catherine. And earlier on, you actually said that it has set us at international standards as a country. It is the first in Kenya, right, to have this kind of policy. So let's take a look at some other companies with pregnancy loss policies, and they include, according to International Foundation of Employee Benefit Plans, we have Pinterest, which provides 4 weeks paid leave for pregnancy loss. We also have Inc. House, which offers 2 weeks of paid leave to all regular full-time employees, I beg your pardon, who experience miscarriage or a pregnancy loss within the first 20 weeks. We also have Goldman, which provides employees 20 days of paid leave if they, a spouse or a surrogate, has a miscarriage or stillbirth. And we have Mint, which offers 15 days of paid leave to employees following a miscarriage and 5 days after a failed fertility treatment, adoption, or surrogacy. And again, can we talk about this, ladies? Because some companies seem to have gone beyond, you know, a miscarriage, and they're also offering some of these paid leave days to employees who have suffered a failed fertility treatment, adoption, or surrogacy. Again, Evelyn, nianze na wewe, sijui kama unaona kama hii ni kitu ambayo pia sisi kama taifa tunafaa kuadopt, niruhusu niseme hivyo.
Asanti. Kwangu inafaa sana kwa sababu ni kitu ambacho kimeaffect jamii na kimetuaffect hata mpaka kazini. Wakati unapata umepoteza ujauzito alafu kazini hauko recognized, haupewi hiyo paid leave, unapata unakuwa na hata mpaka depression. Lakini kama kinaweza chukuliwa na uzito, kina mama watapona.
Right.
Mama akipoteza ujauzito, angaliwe tu, atunzwe tu.
Kweli.
Naomba, it's my prayer, kichukuliwe tu na uzito na kitatusaidia sana.
Kweli.
Kikiingia kwa kila kampuni itakuwa kitu kizuri.
Kweli.
Na kitasaidia kina mama.
Catherine, after a failed fertility treatment, adoption or surrogacy?
Thank you, Grace. I personally support a failed fertility treatment to have a policy by itself. Simply because when you are actually looking for a baby as a woman, you have tried to conceive probably for the last 5 years or thereabout. So when you start the treatment on fertility, remember IVF is also very expensive. And it's only recently, actually, it has actually come to Kenya, and people are open to discuss about it. So there before, people could actually go to Dubai, could go to South Africa and be able, imagine from the time you start this process, it is also emotionally draining because at the same time, you have to go and see the doctor, you have to be talked to, financially you're also draining. So within that period, if you're working and you don't have days off, it becomes very draining. You drain yourself, and then at the same time, you become unproductive. So for me, I would actually campaign and champion for that particular policy to be put in place so that women who are not able to conceive naturally can actually be able to go through it without much stress. Now, what about the adoption? You want me to talk about the adoption and surrogacy? Now, the other thing is about now, again, when you are adopting, of course, now we have the law in Kenya. It has given us a leeway now when you're adopting. When you're starting the process of adopting a child, our Employment Act have actually now captured the issue. You have 1 month to go through, and this is for a man and also for the lady. So it is 1 month process, but of course you have to submit all the papers, the legal papers, that you are going through, and then the person where you're adopting the baby, you have to surrender them to your employer so that your employer will know that you have actually started the process. Now, the worst part of it is the surrogacy. That one is also very traumatizing emotionally. Remember, I was reading another article the other day, and by the grace of God, a mother actually decided to carry the baby to the daughter. For the daughter. Now, assuming that the daughter had been looking for a baby for 3 years and she was not lucky. Now, imagine now you are dealing with a stranger. Again, there are legal issues, there are medical things that you have to go through, you have to write the agreement again, so it's a back and forth process. I agree and I support it and I champion it, whether if we can be able to come up with the other 3 policies to our companies today in Kenya, it will be a plus for the ladies and it will also be able to increase the morale of female employees in every company.
Most definitely. Whether perhaps, maybe EABL could expand to this, field fertility treatment, adoption, surrogacy?
Yes. So I think for us, our policy includes surrogates. So it
Tell us
incorporates all employees, as I had mentioned earlier, including surrogacy around the pregnancy loss policy. So if you just need to show evidence that there was pregnancy loss through the surrogate, and then you still fall within the timelines. So the breakdown is for, the 26 weeks, before 26 weeks, you get the 10 days working leave. And then after the 26 weeks, you get the 6 months as the carrier. And as the carrier of the the baby, you get the 6 months. And as the spouse, you get the 10 working days. So in the event that you are the spouse or to a surrogate, or you are a surrogate, you then still fall under the pregnancy loss policy and you still fall within those timelines. So for us, we try to be as comprehensive and as robust as we can be, and our policies are reviewed regularly. So currently the one we have that we launched last year does include the surrogates, it includes the spouses, and it covers all our employees. And the good thing about our policy is it breaks down the different pregnancy losses, because the ones that are known are miscarriages, So in the policy, within the policy, it explains what, how to deal with a miscarriage, it explains how to deal, say, with an ectopic pregnancy, it explains how to deal with a stillbirth, and the different time that you have within there. So those are the materials that are available to all our employees. And it also explains to the line managers, how do you then deal with an individual during that process? When they come back, how do you deal with them? We've had instances where when somebody comes back, the first thing you're told is, we thank God you're alive. You're thanking God you're alive. However, you don't know this person's state of mind. This is someone who's been depressed.
That's true.
Some of them are saying, it should have been me. But you're here telling me, thank God I'm alive. So how do you deal with them? What do you say? What don't you say? And so that policy has really been very helpful in terms of managing even the comeback of these individuals back into the business. The fact that they know that the environment is inclusive and is accommodating to them is very, very important. And it's very good for us to be the trendsetter, so that we hold hands and go with other corporates. And we do know, as a corporate citizen, we can even influence policy. So working with organizations like IHRM, seeing what can be done at a larger scale for the country at large.
And it's already been in implementation, right?
Yes,
for
it was launched last year in October.
Last year, October, wow.
October
so it's been on
2022.
for close to a year.
Yes.
Wow,
yes.
that's actually, it's more than a year.
It's more than
We're
a year.
in
We are now just
September. Yeah, wow, that's impressive. Okay, so let's take a look at my last slide here, which basically tells you some of the countries that have a form or provide a form of paid leave for employees following a miscarriage, or that's a pregnancy loss. And they include Indonesia, India, Taiwan, and New Zealand. And we could add Kenya here, by the way. Yeah? So this is according to International Foundation of Employee Benefit Plans. And that is all from the to the point. Yeah, our discussion continues, but Nick tells me we need to take a short break, then we come back with this conversation on miscarriage and pregnancy loss leave. So let's take that short break. Stay with us.
Let's clear pimples. Step 1. Acne's Creamy Wash is a foamy and gentle cleanser that removes sebum and dirt in the pores. Step 2. Acne Soothing Toner maintains skin pH. Step 3. Acne Sealing Gel quickly clears pimple-causing bacteria. Mentholatum Acnes clears, cares, and helps prevent pimples.
Radio 47 tuko nawe mchana kutwa na usiku kucha. 101.8 Garissa. Tunavuma na bado. Finding a home is not always as easy as it may seem. It is a long and tiring process, but here on The Realtor, we will break down all matters real estate to make it easier for you to find your dream home. From interior design to joint ventures, leasing of land, technology, and so much more. Tuesdays, 6:30 p.m.
On the next episode of The Grind.
Now, most of us have side hustles, but turning that side hustle to your main hustle is where the hustle may come in.
I started it as a side hustle and then started doing it as a full-time employee.
Now, this week we talk to Mama Milky, also known as Njoki, as she gets to tell us how she turned her side hustle to her main 9-to-5.
For me, I have to have kids. I need to have baby food, I need to have health, that is, and then the family.
Get this business story Monday, 6:30 p.m.
Before fainting, it's common to experience some of the following symptoms: dizziness, lightheadedness, sweating.
Right, thank you so much for staying with us. We continue with the conversation we've been having on miscarriage, the subtopic being pregnancy loss leave. And of course, my guests are still with me. You have seen them already, but they're still here. Evelyn Odwari, a gospel minister, Waithera Mwai, sustainability and stakeholder engagement manager at Kenya Breweries Limited, and of course, Catherine Mwangi, council member, Institute of Human Resource Management, IHRM. Thank you, ladies, for staying with me.
Thank you.
So Evelyn, nataka nirudi na wewe kwa sababu ulituambia kwamba umepata experience, miscarriage. Na nashukuru sana wewe kukuja hapa na kukuwa willing kushare story yako na sisi, maanake najua sio rahisi. Mara nyingine huwa pengine nahisi vibaya, maanake ni kama nakumbusha mtu jambo ambalo lilifanyika, lakini ningependa tu kwa kifupi utueleze story yako ni ipi, ama kulingana na kuhusiana Kiswahili jamani kuhusiana na miscarriage.
Okay, kuna kitu ambacho nimejifunza wakati ni kitu ambacho kilifanyika miaka 10 iliyopita, na nikajifunza kwamba mtu ajipende. Kujipenda inamaanisha wakati unaambiwa usifanye. Lakini watu wengi tumejipata kwa mazingira kwa sababu ya kutojipenda. So miscarriage, nimepoteza mimba 3 zikaharibika zikifuatana. Baada ya kufanywa upasuaji wa mtoto wa kwanza, nikaambiwa nichukue muda nisipate mtoto. Lakini kwa sababu ya ile mazingira, kuna kitu kinaitwa mazingira. Mazingira yamefanya watu wakajipata kwa vitu ambavyo hawakudhania wanaweza jipata kwavyo. So mazingira yangu ndio yaliyosababisha hizi miscarriage zote 3. Baada ya kufanywa upasuaji wa mtoto wa kwanza, nikaambiwa usipate mtoto tena, ukae miaka 2 ndiposa uweze kuwa na uwezo wa kubeba ujauzito. Lakini kwa sababu ya ile mazingira, ikawa itawezekanaje? Vile tu tumeambiwa ya kwamba kuna watu wanakuambia pole, afadhali umepatikana uko mzima. Haelewi licha kuwa nimetoka mzima kuna kitu nimepoteza. So yale mazingira ya kuwa ya kwamba utawezaje kama miaka 2 na hauna mtoto. So nikawa na fight nipate mtoto. Nikakosa kukumbuka kwamba kuna Evelyn ambaye anafaa kuishi. Nimeambiwa nikae miaka 2, si kutumia chochote. So ikawa ya kwamba ile uterus bado iko weak, haingeweza kubeba mtoto tena. So nikabeba, baada ya kitu kama miezi 2 niko na mimba inaharibika, na beba tu inaharibika. Mwaka mmoja nimepoteza mimba 3. So kwa yale mazingira ya kutofuatilia, umeambiwa kwamba usifanye. Lakini wewe unaangalia kwa sababu nisifanye, na mazingira ambayo niko ndani hayaniruhusu. Watu wanauliza, watu wanasema, kitu kinaitwa watu. Watu wamefanya watu wakajipata kwa mazingira mabaya sana. So ikanifanya nikawa sina uwezo wa kubeba ile mimba. Ikafika ule umri ambao unafaa kufika, so zinaharibika tu mpaka zikaharibika zikiwa 3. Na hata hii nyingine ya 5 pia ni neema, tunasema neema ya Mungu, kwa sababu pia kwa umri fulani ingeharibika, lakini Mungu akaisaidia tu ikaweza kukua. So naweza ambia watu, mazingira tutengenezee wa mama mazingira mazuri, especially wanaume pale kazini, mume nyumbani. Tengenezea mke wako mazingira mazuri, yani aweze kubeba hii mimba, hata ikiharibika mtie nguvu bado, maana bado kuna maisha. So mazingira yalichangia sana. Yalichangia sana. Mimi kupoteza hizo ujauzito zote 3, mimba zote 3, ni mazingira ambao niliokuwa kwayo. Na nikawa ile nasikiza watu, watanionaje, watasemaje, na sahau kwamba nina maisha yangu. So leo hii nimejifunza kujipenda. Usifanye kitu sababu ya mtu. Jipende. Hata sisi wa mama tujaribu kujitengenezea mazingira mazuri. Tujaribu sana kujitengenezea mazingira mazuri. Yeah.
Right. Catherine, she's talking about mazingira, being part, or the environment being part of the reasons, or the main reason rather, she, suffered 3 miscarriages, yeah? And I'm curious about what the HR or the HR policy is concerning empathy. We mentioned that before the break, Waithera did, but how do we show empathy? From the beginning when one is pregnant, and unfortunately when one suffers a miscarriage and comes back to work, as at now, like we're saying, we only have 1 Kenyan company with this policy. So that means after a few days, this person shall come back to work. How do we show empathy and remember the men also on this?
Sure. Thank you, Grace. Indeed, environment is very important. I started by saying that we must have clear and sensitive communication channels that are open, so that once you are pregnant, it is always good to walk through both ways, men and women. It is good for men to declare to their employer that I'm having a baby, and especially if you know that your spouse have got these challenges of losing the baby or instilled babies. So, and if you are ready, it's good as well to declare that. So what we are saying that from a HR point of view, creating open and clear communication that is sensitive, it's very vital, because that is a way where you are actually taking care of the environment of those particular individuals.
But one would ask, is that the way it is on the ground? Because you're saying we must have policies. Do we have them?
Now, East African breweries have actually set the pace for us. Most of the companies have got informal policies are there. And I think it's the high time that we actually put them in writing, so that we can be able now to educate everybody from the highest to the lowest, so that once this kind of an environment is created, people will be able to handle people with a lot of sensitivity. So the informal policies that I'm talking about is that once you have become pregnant, it's always good to declare to the right department. And of course, confidentiality, we talked about it in the first place when we are opening the discussion. Now, the next thing is that if it happens that the lady have lost the pregnancy. Now, that is the time that the HR department is supposed to actually have a continuous conversation with that individual, opening up areas on counseling so that this person will be able to heal faster. And if there is no policy as far as the pregnancy loss leave is in place, you can actually be able to use the compassionate that is within the Employment Act. Although the Employment Act does not give the days, but there are companies that they come up with their own policies. Like my previous employer, we used to have 3 to 5 days. So during that particular time that the lady have lost the pregnancy, you can actually be able to apply that. So that now this lady will be able to heal. Remember that when you lose pregnancy, whether it is 3 weeks, as Madam, my colleague have said, it is emotionally attached to yourself and even to your spouse. So you need time so that you can be able to heal physically, the inside of you, and of course, the trauma within the society, because the society will always be able to place you somewhere. Now, at the same time, when you come back on duty, the HR department is also supposed to do a schedule for you. Actually, you can be, sometimes we apply the flex hours. Thank God for today, because they can actually even work from home. And they'll still be able to produce. Now, if it is a month that you have to come to work, then there will be schedules that are supposed to be extracted for you to be able to heal gradually, so that if there is a workload from whatever you do every day, part of your job can actually be extracted and be given to other colleagues, so that you can be able now to heal gradually, you know, be able to keep, to put up on your roles gradually without much pressure. That way it will also be able to release stress on you. And then the other point, Grace, is that HR, we are actually coming up with training of the supervisors. Remember, that particular individual is not actually working direct to the HR department. So there are other line managers who are supposed to be trained on counseling and even how to handle sensitive information. As Madam Waithera was saying, imagine when you come to work and somebody says, thank God you are alive. You know, those kind of sentiments are actually very negative. So the line managers should be trained so that they can be able to accept the situation as it is, and then they will be able to walk through with you as you continue healing. Entirely, the whole company should actually be sensitized on the same, so that they will be able to understand individuals and handle them with care.
You're saying you're saying we must have. So what is IHRM doing to ensure we now have these policies actually in place?
What IHRM is doing right now, in fact, we already have a policy that is out for participation. So we have actually started working out on these policies, and even as Waithera said, so that we can be able to reach out to a bigger scope. And one thing I can tell you, that we are actually on the table drafting this, including the infertility, which is very sensitive, and I have realized that even Kenya breweries, East African breweries have not been able to capture it, because it's also emotional. So in due course, it's work in progress, Grace. And
when do we expect results?
Probably maybe next year by April. Next year by April. Right. So some of these, because already some of them are already out, because you know some of these policies you need to let people participate, so that you can be able to get input from the society, from the members and all that. So we are actually, it's work in progress, that I can promise you it's happening.
Right. Okay. Waithera, I want to understand why 6 months, you know, because it's 6 months for the woman, 10 days for the man. Yeah. Why the 6 months? Why not 5? Why not 7?
Okay, so for us, we are aligning it with our family leave, which I had mentioned to you earlier. So within our family leave policy, we offer 6 months for the carrying mother. So we align it to that, because in our thinking and our research, we want all our policies to be aligned, and 6 months really is almost the limit that we can give currently. So it's aligning with our family leave policy of 6 months, and we also enhance our bereavement policy to 10 days. So what she's calling compassionate leave is what we have. So currently we offer 10 days for any bereavement of a spouse, of a parent, and of a child. So that aligns also with the 10 days that you give to the spouse. Yeah.
And I'm curious about what the reception or reaction has been like. One, from your employees, when this was introduced in October, you said last year, right? And the past 3 days, how they've been for EABL, because that was when this blew up on social media. You guys were trending on Twitter on Thursday, Wednesday, thereabout. What has the reception been like?
So internally, staff have taken it very, very well because they are alive to the fact that it is time now that pregnancy loss rather, is seen as a bereavement, so that I'm not taking my personal leave days, or I'm not just taking compassionate. I need time. I need the patience of my line manager. I need the patience of the business to understand where I'm at, so that I can heal physically and so that I can come to terms mentally in a very gradual process. Because research has shown, and even Evelyn has mentioned it, depression, anxiety, intrusive thoughts leading to suicidal thoughts around this pregnancy loss is very, very high, especially for recurring miscarriages. So in terms of our policies, they are very aligned to research, to data, and that is what informed how we, the length and the duration. And the reception for our staff and our employees and their partners and their families has been amazing.
How about for you as a woman?
No, for me also. I really appreciate the fact that I work in an organization that values my well-being, that promotes my health, and that is focused on me healing and coming to work at a point where I'm able to be as productive as I can be. And they have given us that opportunity to heal, and it even encourages employee retention, because I'll be loyal to EABL because they understand me. They are going above and beyond the norm, and they understand me, and they want to give me a very inclusive and holistic life. So to your point about us trending, we launched our annual report, which is where we stated that we had launched the pregnancy loss leave policy, and there were some negative sentiments, as you would expect, with some people saying that duration was too long. But for us, we remain focused. You'll always have a critic, and when you have a critic, you're doing something right, because you've jolted somebody to think and really examine what you're doing. But we are very confident that we are in the right direction, because for us, we want you to come to work not, having physical issues, not being your best, So we are providing you with an environment where you can be as productive, and you enhance our performance as much as we can, because we've given you an environment where you're comfortable.
Right. Okay, and
allow me
Catherine,
to
just hold your thought, please. I'll come back with you, because Nick says we need to take a break. I'll come back with you, Catherine, I promise. So let's take that short, quick break. Stay with us.
Ndio msiko inasikianga ikifanyiwa shopping, ikipepwa na kusukumwa namna hii. Oh my goodness. Lotto inapeana 100,000 shopping voucher in case ulikuwa una doubt. Wacha nikuoneshe washindi hapa. Ulikuwa unaamini kweli unaweza pata kitu kama hii?
Sikuamini, but nilijaribu na nikaweza.
Nilipoambiwa kwamba mimi ni mshindi, nilikuwa like, am I dreaming? So yani hata sikuamini, na nina furaha sana.
Shopping ya kubwa kabisa, kama si ilikuwa pesa ngapi?
Hii ilikuwa ya 30,000.
30,000. Kwa hivyo leo umeelevate. Wakati ulipigiwa simu ulifanya nini?
Nilikuwa na doubt, lakini nikaamini baadaye.
Hii shopping imekupanga vipi?
Vizuri sana, especially na hiyo economy.
Imekuinua kabisa.
Sana.
Kwa wale watu pengine walikuwa na doubt kuhusu mambo ya shopping ya Lotto, voucher kutoka Lotto, ungependa kuambia nini?
Jaribu jione.
Over 18s only. Gaming can be addictive. Play responsibly. This message has been approved by the BCLB.
Changamka, cheza Lotto.
All right, thank you for staying with us. We continue with the conversation we've been having on our pregnancy loss leave. And Catherine, I promised I'll come back with you. I kept my word. I did cut you short before we took the break.
Thank you, Grace. I wanted to add and say that EABL have already set the pace for most of the organizations in Kenya. And I think what we need to do, we don't have to go with 20 weeks. We don't have to go with 26 weeks. We can set our pace from where we are. Remember, organizations are set based on the culture and the values of that organization. So we can actually be able to anchor and say probably maybe in 14 weeks or thereabout, so that we can be able to accommodate our values within the organization. And of course, you know, at the end of the day, the 20 weeks and the 26 weeks have got financial constraint at the same time. So East African breweries have set the pace. Probably maybe they know their budget and all that, and especially when you look at where we are in this country as far as our economy is concerned. We don't want to scare the organizations, but we want to say, yes, we can start from somewhere. So the best of it is that this kind of policy will be able to retain. Of course, it will be able to give them emotional stability. It will also be able to add productivity, the well-being of the staff. They'll feel recognized. And above all, I'm sure EABL have already attracted competitive advantage at this level. So for us to be able to emulate what they have done, it is good to start from somewhere. So, yeah.
And you actually brought out something that I wanted to ask you, but you did it first, yeah? Evelyn, tunaongelea kuhusu, you know, the leave na EABL wanapeana 6 months, right? Na ulituambia kwamba kilichochangia katika miscarriage zako Evelyn ni mazingira. Sijui kama, na ukatueleza ya kwamba ni muhimu kuwa na ile support. Support ni nini kwa Kiswahili? Usaidizi. Kama unahisi vipi kama ungepata support ama usaidizi zaidi kutoka kwa jamii, kutoka kwa mahali pa kazi, sijui ingekusaidia vipi zaidi?
Ingenisaidia ningepona. Vile amesema, kupona, kuna kupona kwa akili, mawazo na mwili upone, na moyo pia upone. Kwa hivyo mazingira yakiwa mazuri na kusaidia kupona. Na ningehisi vizuri sana kama ningesaidiwa nipone hata kwa wakati huo, kwa sababu nahisi ya kwamba sikusaidiwa na sikupata mazingira ya kunifanya nipone. Na mama akipoteza, kupoteza ujauzito ni kitu kichungu. Kwa hivyo unahitaji mazingira tu, pale kazini utunzwe vizuri, pale nyumbani, marafiki pia, jamii pia, na utunzwe, uwekwe vizuri ili uweze kupona. Ukipona utaweza kupata nguvu na utaweza kusonga. Kwa hivyo ni vizuri sana watu wasaidiwe wapone.
Na pengine kwa sababu ya hiyo, sijui ilikuchukua muda upi sasa kupona?
Imenichukua miaka.
Miaka mingapi hivi?
Zaidi ya miaka 15. Zaidi ya miaka 15. Ndiposa nawaambia kwamba kuna wamama wanapitia vitu vingi vichungu sana. Wengine hata wawezi ongea mtu akasikia. Na kuna kitu mimi hupenda kuambia watu. Tunapotembea njiani unaona kila mtu ako kwa shughuli zake, lakini wamama wamebeba vitu vizito sana. Kwa hivyo mimi imenichukua miaka, si mwaka moja, zaidi ya miaka 15. Hata ndio, I think in just last year, ndio nimeweza kuwa naweza ongea history. Watu wengi hata wakaijua. Kuna wakati singeweza ongea. Kwa sababu ni kitu ambacho kilini affect sana, kiliniumiza, sikuwa na mtu wa kunisikiza, mazingira yalikuwa mabaya, sikuwa na mtu wa kunielewa. Ungeona mtu ambaye anadhoofika afya, lakini kumbe kuna kitu kinamkula na ndani. So imenichukua miaka mingi sana. Sana.
Na sababu leo tunazungumzia masuala ya kazini. Sijui mahali ambapo ulikuwa kazini, whether ulikuwa pengine umeajiriwa ama ulikuwa umejiajiri, sijui support hapo ilikuwa vipi?
Support ilikuwa mbaya.
Kivipi?
Unajua kuna watu, kuna kitu nimejifunza kwa maisha ya kwamba ukiona mtu anaweza pona, kuna watu wamemfanya akapona. Na ukiona mtu anashindwa kustahimili kipindi, pia kuna watu wamechangia mtu akakosa kustahimili kipindi. Kuna watu utasikia wanasema, huyu mbona hapati watoto, huyu mbona ni wakupoteza, huyu mbona. So mimi mazingira yangu yalikuwa mabaya sana. Hata wanasema ni neema ya Mungu ilinisaidia kustahimili yale mazingira, kwa sababu kuna wale wanaona mbona hauna uwezo. Unajua miscarriages zinakuja na vitu tofauti. Kuna wengine ni yale mazingira, kuna wengine ni uterus imekuwa na shida, kuna wengine ni magonjwa yamesababisha, lakini kwa sababu mtu haelewi atakutengeneza mazingira ambayo atakufanya uishi na machozi. So mimi mazingira yangu yalikuwa mabaya sana. Kula ambako nilikuwa kazi, kula ambako nilikuwa nakaa, mazingira ya kifamilia yalikuwa mazingira ya uchungu. Kwa hivyo yalinichukua muda sana mimi kupona. Hata mawazo yangu kukubali ya kwamba hivi vitu vimefanyika kwangu, vimeathiri afya yangu, ilinichukua muda sana. Ni neema tu ya Mungu ilinisaidia.
Shukran Evelyn. Whether there is something I read out on To The Point, which, allow me to just read it again, the Brewers, that is EABL's pregnancy loss guidelines, create awareness on various types of pregnancy loss, including resources available to employees and line managers of those who may experience this loss. I want us to talk about that, the resources available to the line managers of those who experienced the loss.
Okay, so there's a lot of education and awareness that is given around this topic. So when the policy was launched, there's something we have an inclusive week. So during the inclusive week last year, our HR department is then launched this policy and brought us all together and took us through what this policy means. So there's training and awareness that demystifies, this stigma, to remove the stigma around pregnancy loss. Right, and as I mentioned earlier, this it's not in isolation of just the person affected. There needs to be that environment that Evelyn is speaking around through the line managers. So sensitization of the line managers, and this the training and the availability of these resources that I can get to understand there are different types of pregnancies. So when someone comes and tells me that I had an ectopic pregnancy, what is that? Is that really pregnancy loss? How do I deal with that? If someone comes and says I had a stillbirth, what does that mean? And how do I deal with that? Is it only miscarriages? No. So through training and awareness of the policy and making those resources available, training, documentation, the policy itself, the time away is a resource, giving the 6 months, the 10 working days, giving the employees the time away are resources available to us. So we have continuous training for staff, for all employees, for line managers particularly, to give an environment that is inclusive, that is welcoming, accommodative of these employees who have gone through these kind of trials. Yes.
Let's address a concern that so many people have raised when we put it out there that, we're going to be having this conversation today. And again, Catherine did allude to it. What this means for business. She mentioned financial constraints, but I want us to discuss what this means for business, because it's 6 months of paid leave. The entire 6 months this employee is not at work, yeah? Perhaps it's not just one, it could be 2 or 3. That's 3 people away for 6 months but still getting paid. How does it have any effect on business?
Yes, it has effects on business. And I'll start with the positive effects that we've been talking about today. The positive effects of giving an individual time away to grieve, to heal, means they will come back as productive and as close, to mental stability as they can and emotional stability as they can. So when you're in a high stress environment, you can actually be productive and work and focus on work. So we have employees who are loyal, who are dedicated, who are able to work under the pressures of normal work stress. Yes, they've been provided for that environment. So the business is gaining that this employee is not just here physically. You see, a lot of organizations don't have that policy. So after, say, a week, and I've taken my own leave days, I'm already aggrieved that I have to take my own leave days beyond the compassionate. Then I have to come back. I'm just there physically. I'm not there mentally. Yeah, I'm irritable. I'm not able to work as a team. I'm not closing on my targets. There's a lot. So that individual is not able to perform. And in the long run, that in fact impacts your business, right? And so if you're looking at it from the side of you've given somebody 6 months away, look at it from the other side of, in those 6 months, that job has not been vacant. We do a lot of cross-training. So when that person has proceeded, say, on maternity leave, has gone on pregnancy loss leave, we cross-train and we empower our staff so that even that enhances business continuity, because for 6 months, you're on that term contract. I have left, say, the role I was doing and maybe even got into a more senior role, holding fort for this individual who has gone. And I'm able to even learn more and empower myself, ready even for the next step, say if it's a higher level. So I think organizations really need to think through long-term benefits versus the short-term, because I think the conversation is always very short-term. The here and now, I've lost 6 months of resources. I've lost these 6 months. But you need to think through, when this person comes back, they're here, you won't fire them because they're not, they've come back and they're not being very productive. So you have an employee who's disgruntled, who's struggling with depression and anxiety and not able to perform.
So there is no negative effect financially on the business?
I think if you look at it that way, in the short term, you're taking on the the fact that somebody is away and you're paying them for that pregnancy loss leave, it does impact your bottom line. But we are an organization that thinks long term, because we are saying in the long run, we are going to benefit. This person is going to be retained. They'll be happy with us. They're going to stay because they know that we appreciate them. And we've given you a very accommodative environment. So in the long run, the cost-benefit analysis, it'll pay out.
Okay, all right. So Nick is in my ear telling me we need to wrap up. 30 seconds each, please. Your closing remarks. I'll start with you, Evelyn. 30 seconds, tafadhali.
Thank you. Kwanza naanza na kuwashukuru. Nakushukuru KBL. Mungu awabariki sana. Na kuambia Wakenya kwamba naweza omba sana kampuni zote Kenya waangalie wamama ambao wamepitia miscarriages, watengenezewe mazingira mazuri. Asante.
Okay, Catherine.
Thank you, Grace. One thing that I want to assure our viewers is that IHRM is on it, and I want to say it again, it's work in progress. And I want to say that most of all the organizations that have not started should actually start. As much as Weather is saying about the positive part of it, of course I want to agree to some extent it has also the negative. Some of the loopholes, Madam Grace, assuming that have gone away for 26 weeks, that's about 6 months. And then by the time that I'm healing in this process, the time period of my healing, I get pregnant again. So by the time I'm coming back to work, I have already consumed 6 months for the employer, and again I'm coming back. So some of these loopholes should actually be looked at. And then the other thing is that at a certain point, it will also be able to break the team dynamic, because when you're away again for too long, by the time you're coming back, you look like a stranger again. The redistribution of work, it will also be able to slug down the productivity, because by the time that I sit on your chair and I learn for a particular period, probably maybe in the next 2 months, even if there is a rotation and all that, so the productivity is also going down. So for me, it also depends with the size of the business, because if I'm managing a small organization as a HR, where absenteeism will actually will become an issue, again, it becomes a problem. And for this reason, probably maybe we can be able to start low as we move on for this. And I think it's commendable for EABL for where they are and how they have started, and they're actually teaching us the way forward. Thank you, Grace.
All right. Well, there is part of your closing remarks. Kindly address those loopholes.
Okay.
In a minute. I don't know how you're going to do it.
I would first say that I think the benefits outweigh what you would say as a negative, because the minute you say that you have taken time away from the business, already it's in a frame of mind that it's like something it's a token. You know, it's not a token. You are also giving of yourself, mind, body, and emotionally to the organization. And so when you have an individual who can come back and is present mentally, physically, and emotionally, the business gains, the individual gains. So we want people to be as accommodated as possible. And so you need, that's why I was saying you need to look at it as a long-term benefit, because even that transfer of skills, it's to the benefit of the organization, not you as an individual. So the organization is going to benefit and say, this job that Grace can do, within 6 months, Evelyn has trained and has been able to understand and appreciate that role. So that's enhancing your business continuity for this, say, unique or specified roles. Right. So we are able to ensure that business continuity through this opening up of the 6 months leave. In closing, I would just like to say, I think the time is now, because the myth and the stigmatism around pregnancy loss is very huge. And the reason why people are not even opening up, that's why HR are pushing you for open communication, because WHO said that before 12 weeks, women and their partners are feeling apprehensive even to talk about the pregnancy because of the high rate of miscarriages. So you don't want to go tell the world, hi, I'm here, I've gotten this pregnancy, and then you lose it, you know, within those 12. And that's a very sensitive period, the first trimester. So I think in giving employees the confidence and policies that are tangible, that they can talk about and that they know they're founded within the organization, I'm comfortable enough to say and to know, even as I go through the struggles of life, that you're not only celebrating me that when I have this baby, now go and be a mother, but even when you lose one, go and grieve and rest and come back to us when you're ready to be as productive and push our performance as best as you can.
Right. Okay. Great place to end. Thank you so much, ladies. thanks for your time and your contribution today. Evelyn Odwari, a Gospel Minister, Waithera Mwai, Sustainability and Stakeholder Engagement Manager, KBL, that is Kenya Breweries Limited, and of course Catherine Mwangi, Council Member, Institute of Human Resource Management, IHRM. So Nick tells me he wants me standing to close the show. So this is where we ended. Thank you for your time. Thank you for viewing. Thank you for your feedback. I see it. Unfortunately, I can't sample it because of Nick, but I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you for always tuning in. My name is Grace Kuriakanja. Do have a blessed night.